About 80 protesters gathered in Strathroy Saturday morning to express to their MPP how they feel about hundreds of wind turbines planned for their area. The march turned from a peaceful protest with the usual chants and slogans into an angry confrontation in front of Maria Van Bommel's office.
Informed as to the health risks because you don't have the clinical studies that prove it.
Our own medical officer for health at the provincial level has told us that there is no reason to be concerned about health.
We want our
Van Bommel stood strong in defense of the Ontario Liberal government's green energy plan.
As a government, we are absolutely determined to make sure that this is done in as safe a way as possible for everyone in the public.
So we can enjoy our family farms and our homes. It's all we're asking. It's not safe, and you're making us live with it.
Opponents say wind turbines are already affecting their health.
Some nights then I wake up and just everything inside me is quivering, and I can't get to sleep again, and that happens often enough that it's compromised my immune system.
Van Bommel promised to take the concerns of wind opponents back to her caucus.
But I also have to take into account the other part of my constituents who are very much in favor of the Green Energy Act as well.
The kind of anger simmering here could have an effect on the provincial election this fall. For the London Free Press, I'm Randy Richmond.
This is Saugeen Times, December the 3rd, Saturday morning, and we have a major protest going on in Port Elgin, Saugeen Shores, regarding the proposed installation of a new wind turbine at the CAW Family Education Center.
And I'm here mostly because of my daughter Josie here, because we're in the pylon corridor in Roscommon, and our house is right there. And if they put the pylons up, because Josie is autistic, the noise of the buzzing of the cables will be very difficult for her.
There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of Rockport throughout the breadth and length of this country if this government does not listen to the communities and put them there in the first place.
Where's that pesky wabbit?
Trying to stay in their house for the banks. The government's policy, developer-led, to jack up our energy prices is pushing these people further and further into fuel poverty. We need an absolute, fundamental rethink of our energy policy. From start to finish.
We are not NIMBYs. We are not antis. We are pro-sustainable progress. Progress that is economically sustainable. Progress that is environmentally sustainable. And above all, progress that is suitable for Ireland.
We're the whistleblowers today. We're the ones telling them this plan is wrong, it's flawed, it's developer-led. So who are the whistleblowers? Who are the whistleblowers?
There's developers involved here who are too close to government.
Germany's 2030 renewable energy goals are on a collision course with reality. The country's energy sector needs a hero, something to save the green agenda before it's too late. And to fill those larger-than-life shoes, the government has put its faith in wind power.
We are convinced that the expansion towards 65% of renewable power on the grids by 2030 can only be reached if the expansion of onshore wind is revived.
For years, wind power was a main driving force of Germany's fast-expanding green energy industry, making up almost a quarter of total production so far this year. Its proponents praise wind as one of Germany's most important energy sources, creating thousands of jobs and many megawatts of energy while also cutting CO2 emissions. But wind farm expansion has slowed to a snail's pace. And these towering mills have caused hundreds of anti-wind citizens' initiatives to spring up across the country. So I drove down to Brandenburg to ask residents how they felt about these windmills being built in their backyards.
At night, the aircraft warning lights are flashing so that you feel like you're in the middle of an industrial park or an oil refinery.
During winter months, the shadows from the rotating mills create a disco effect in your living room, and there are a lot of complaints about it.
We can't even sit outside on Sundays or open our windows at night because of the noise. The whole landscape flickers. Those are serious problems.
But noises and shadows aren't the only issues here. In fact, residents are complaining about other ways in which windmills are hurting the environment.
Renewable energy is a great idea, but there needs to be a reasonable approach. Windmills in the forest, we're generally against that.
Birds, bats and insects are being killed en masse, and that damages biodiversity by technology that's supposed to be environmentally friendly. There are more negative outcomes than positive ones.
And to top it all off, they feel that the government doesn't care who bears the burden.
Our wind generating zone was built at a distance prescribed for smaller mills, and that was okay. But then they built an additional one that is 50 meters higher, with disregard to the local community. We haven't been asked, but just presented with the facts.
The first 6 mills were installed, and we originally considered it positive. Now they're getting bigger, taller, louder. People are getting annoyed. And now there is a notion that our contribution to renewables has been fulfilled and the expansion should stop.
And if the government doesn't explore other alternatives in response to this grassroots opposition, Germany's environmental goals could be gone with the wind. Donald Corder, RT, Brandenburg.
It was tough. When I'd go out to the barn in the morning, I didn't know what I was going to find.
About a year and a half after they went online, we moved out of our house.
I don't know how else to say it. They're not a farm, period.
You suffering is okay. When your kids are suffering, that really affects you as a mom.
Ear pain, pressure, headaches, dizziness, failure to sleep, chest pressure, chest pain. There's just a litany of symptoms that are universal, i.e. they're not just here in Shirley Wind, they're all over the world.
Well, I basically ended up losing all the cattle because we had so many injuries, deaths, milk production, because I was right around that 75, 80 pounds of milk a cow. And within about 3 weeks after the turbines went up, we were down to 28 pounds a cow. The first approximately 9 months, we had 70 plus animals that either died or went down that had to be euthanized. And it just got to the point that we couldn't survive anymore on the cattle, and we didn't want to put the cattle through all the effects that they were getting off the turbines.
In my professional opinion, most of the nuisance problems and health problems is primarily coming from the pressure pulsations in the infrasound range, which is basically inaudible noise.
So what is infrasound?
Infrasound is a very low hertz level noise. Probably hear it in kids' car stereos that they have nowadays with a very loud booming noise. That's in the infrasound range. And infrasound can be audible if the noise level is very high, but what we're recording from the wind turbines is showing it to be, for the most part, in the inaudible range. The biggest health issues were sleep deprivation or sleep disturbances. My wife and also my youngest son, who was 6 months old when the windmills went online. Also anxiety for my wife and some speech difficulties for my youngest son, who was 2 when we moved out. His habits changed dramatically within a week to 2 weeks of moving out.
So I'm currently sleeping in the basement, and I have been sleeping in the basement probably for the past 7 years, 8 years. I miss when you go down. I miss sleeping by him.
A wind developer stopped out at the farm here one day. He's trying to convince me that we should put windmills on this farm. And I said, what do you tell people who can't sleep because of the noise and the vibration? He says, all you need is some sleeping pills and you can sleep through it. That was a wind developer telling me that.
No, I'm not against renewable energy at all, and I'm not against wind turbines. Quite the opposite. I like renewable energy and all that. I think it's great. If you're putting it near people and it's affecting them in a bad way, it's not right. Especially since they know and we keep telling them and they're fine with it. Then it seems more like it's about profit than about helping.
There are a number of things that we can do. I don't know why people haven't done it.
There's plenty of sufficient evidence to say shut them down until we find out what's really going on here, how bad this is really going to be, rather than waiting until you get huge lawsuits and then watch the money roll out of the courtrooms. It's going to be huge.
The display we're seeing here in the middle of the screen is an oscilloscope display. An oscilloscope is a type of instrument we often see on a heart monitor. It displays how something is changing as a function of time. Both bright dots moving across the display in this case are showing the variation in barometric pressure as a function of time. The sensor connected to the lower dot is located in an upstairs bedroom of Norma and Ron Schmidt's house. The upper sensor is located in the kitchen where the instruments are located. The home is in Underwood, Ontario. The house is located about 500 meters from the closest wind turbine. What we're seeing here is the fluctuation in the barometric pressure in the home, which is occurring at a frequency identical to the blade passing frequency of the turbines in the immediate area of the home. This blade passing frequency is 0.72 Hertz, or 0.72 cycles per second, far below a frequency that humans perceive as sound, but well within the sensitivity of our eardrums or tympanic membrane, as is known medically. This variation in barometric pressure is a very small fluctuation relative to the barometric pressure itself, but has a sound pressure level somewhat louder than loud speech at a distance of about 2 feet from a person speaking. This level is about 60 to 65 decibels on average, but reaches much higher and much lower levels over a period of time, as we can see from the oscilloscope display.
The measuring systems we have can determine the difference in air pressure between the upper and lower surfaces of a sheet of paper, even down to 1/40th of its thickness. That's how accurate our measuring systems are.
Extremely precise and thus also sensitive to infrasound signals generated by technical sources.
The Lake Moldau hydroelectric power station is located nearby. When a lot of water is released, that's also a factor. Wind farms are another source we know about.
So the infrasound from wind farms could affect the measurements taken by the I-26DE station. Because of this, back in 2004, the BGR examined the infrasound emissions from a single wind turbine. The scientists were mainly interested in assessing how far from the wind turbine it would still be possible to register infrasound emissions. Their measurements were analyzed at the BGR's National Data Center. Lars Serrana comments on the frequency spectrum.
At low frequencies, our infrasound sensors picked up very clear signals from the wind turbine. Every time the blade passes the tower, large air volumes are compressed and sheared. This signal produces an infrasound signature, which we refer to as blade pass harmonics.
The blade pass harmonics of the wind turbine are individual frequencies. They emerge from the background noise with a distinctly higher acoustic pressure level, in other words, with more energy. Lars Serrana explains.
If we follow the blue line with the mouse, that is the background noise. The distinctive elements of it here represent the contribution from the wind energy plant, the blade passing harmonics, when the blade passes the tower and generates an infrasound signal.
The wind turbine studied in 2004 was very small, barely 0.2 megawatts. For bigger wind farms, the scientists made a model calculation.
It takes us to a dimension where we can say that a 5-megawatt wind turbine would possibly generate a detectable infrasound signal even from a distance of 20 kilometers.
20 kilometers? But didn't they claim at the German Environment Agency that the infrasound emissions from wind energy plants are already lost in the background noise from a distance of 700 meters? So how can this huge difference be explained?
It's customary in acoustics to focus on bands, in other words, on groups of frequencies and not on the individual frequencies.
Just how this affects the data can be explained with different curves. The blue line represents the unembellished data and shows clear peaks.
If I focused on bands, I'd have a red curve here, with the peaks quite clearly evened out.
Thus, a graph flattened to such a degree provided the German Environment Agency with the argument that infrasound from wind farms is swallowed up by the background noise. Professor Alex Salt works at the Washington School of Medicine in St. Louis in the United States. He is an internationally recognized expert on the physiology of the inner ear, and for some time now on the fact that the ear reacts to infrasound. It's an observation Salt and his team made more by chance in carrying out research into a disease of the inner ear. The doctors used infrasound to test how the diseased ear reacts to external stimuli.
Yes, it is. Okay. Yeah, so usually in surgery
we discovered that if you went down to very, very low frequencies, your results got better. So instead of having a sound you can hear like 30, 40 hertz, we went down and down and down, and we discovered even 5 hertz gave us lovely results.
The researchers wanted to get to the bottom of this surprising discovery. Why did the ear react to the signal even though it was inaudible? The answer lies in the complex anatomy of our ear, which, amongst other things, is equipped with 2 different types of sensory hair cells.
When a human is exposed to infrasound, that sound is going to go into their ear. It's going to stimulate their outer hair cells. It's not going to stimulate their inner hair cells, which are the ones they're hearing through. So they don't hear the sound at all, but there's still electrical responses in the ear to the sound, and that is still stimulating another pathway.
Based on his own observations and on an intensive study of specialized literature, Saul's findings are regarded by colleagues as undisputed, but that is not the case outside the world of science.
Lawyers who are on the advisors to the wind turbine people are extremely against this paper. They have given us a hard time for many years. I mean, we get trashed in lawsuits about how this is not possible and all this sort of thing. But somehow the scientists disagree with this. I think if you want to be biased, it's all to do with bias and money, I'm afraid.
For Professor Saul, the scientific questions concerning infrasound and human perception have by no means been fully answered. That's why he considers it important for more research to be carried out in this field.
We can definitely say that under these acute conditions, infrasound really does have a distinct effect on heart muscle tissue. Both series of tests have revealed a clear reduction in heart muscle strength.
Here in the laboratory too, the low-frequency sound cannot be heard, at least not consciously. It becomes visible when Dr. Ryan Shaban holds a sheet of paper in front of the loudspeaker. It is not yet clear just how infrasound manages to reduce the strength of the heart muscle, but one theory has already been put forward.
Think of a rowing boat with rowers in it. They are the cross bridges of the muscle. If this rowing boat is now exposed to an infrasound signal and suddenly starts to shake, if it were an 8 maybe, 4 of the crew would continue rowing, but the 4 others would get out of step, and in a jiffy the boat would lose speed.
What causes the rowing boat, or to be more accurate, the heart muscle, to get out of step is the energy of the infrasound.
Whether we hear it or not, every form of energy has physical effects, and infrasound is particularly dangerous because we don't hear it.
Insomnia, heart problems, perception disorders, dizziness. These are just a few of the disease symptoms that can be caused by infrasound. Doctors believe that between 10 and 30% of people react to it. That means several million in Germany alone. Nevertheless, the mass experiment with wind power continues unabated.